other side of town, and here I am, and then actually right after this I'm driving to Cleveland, so I can't wait for that 4 hours over this, but I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited, of course, to have my second book out. I never thought I'd get a first book done, let alone a second. I don't know if all you guys have the first book.
Yeah.
If you don't, it is available here, and it came out in 2011. And the first book features, you know, the mega bands for the most part. I never knew I'd get a second book, so in the first book, you know, Sabbath and Aerosmith and AC/DC and Van Halen and Metallica, and the huge bands are all in there. And then as I was writing the first book, I figured, well, I got to do this band, I got to do that band, and I started adding bands, and I started sending them into my publisher, and they're like, whoa, 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 you can't, you're out of space. And I said, out of space, it's a book, just add pages. And they were like, it doesn't work that way. And I'm like, what do you mean, why not? It's paper. And they're like, no, they said, you know, you have a certain amount of pages you can do. And I was like, oh. So I had to make some really tough decisions with the first book and cut a lot of bands that I wanted to include. And if you have the first book, in the back of it, it says more essentials, and there's like 20 bands with little paragraphs. And that was a way to at least mention those bands in that book. So when the first book came out in 2011 and did way better than I ever thought, and I think my publisher thought, quickly after it came out, they started to say, hey, you think you could do another one? And I said, well, yeah, because I can start with the bands that didn't get the full treatment in the first book and just pick up with that and maybe add some, maybe not do a couple, but for the most part use that as a blueprint for a second book. So that's exactly what I did. I started working on this book probably like a year ago, and this one I did all myself. My first book I had some help. A woman helped me shape the text and everything, but this one I literally, with my horrific typing skills of hunting and pecking on a keyboard, you know, did this one on my own, and had a lot of help from my editor, of course, as well. But got this one together, and as I got into it, the same process happened. All of a sudden, I'm like, well, wait a minute. I ran out of space for this band, and that band. And I called my editor and I said, we need to do a couple pages in the back of the new one for more essentials, because there's bands I love that I couldn't put in here. So, as you'll notice, that in the new book, there's a page in the back with some bands mentioned, which this book's been out 3 days, and they're already saying, well, when's volume 3 coming? I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So, you know, eventually maybe we'll get there in a year or two, but right now I'm excited to have this out. And one of the differences between the second book, there's a lot of similarities between the first and second book. Same publisher, very much the same sort of format. One of the things I heard so much from people that they loved about the first book was it was an easy read. It's a mix of photos and playlists and text. I mean, there's a ton of books right now, and I love all these rock autobiographies coming out, but they're the size of dictionaries, and I don't have the time personally to read all of them. So this is, like the first book, a very easy read, a fun read. You don't have to, you can leave off at any point, just pick up with a band. People really love that format. So same format, same sort of layout, same art designer. All we did was change the bands and the photos, 35 different bands this time around. And it's been a great experience to have it out. This is my fourth signing. The book came out Tuesday. I launched it in New York, which is kind of my home base. I'm from New Jersey my whole life and just outside of Manhattan. So we launched it with a party on Tuesday in New York City at the signing. Then Wednesday I signed about a mile from my house in New Jersey. And then last night I signed on Staten Island and flew in today. And from here I'm going to 8 stores in 9 days over the course of the next 11. I end in Vegas. Perfect, because I'm going to hang out there for a couple of days. That was very much by design, trust me. But then I'm going to, obviously, wherever I go and whatever I do, the cool thing about books is that they kind of live forever. And even the first book, before this one came out, 2 years after it's out, I still, if I'm going to a concert or something and they'll give me a table to sign books, I'll sign people's books that had just brought it up, or I'll sell them still and people will still buy them. I'll walk through an airport and someone will have a book. So that's really cool for me, because coming from radio, which I've done for 30 years, in radio, you know, you do something and it goes into space and it's, you don't know whoever heard it, it's kind of gone really quick. The book is there forever. The book will outlive me, so that's one of the coolest things for me about having done a book. And, you know, obviously having a TV show that's pretty popular and replays about 50 times a week with repeat episodes doesn't hurt either, and creating awareness for me and for what I do. But overall, I've been in the music business. This is my 30th year, and I started in radio as a kid. The first things I did was in high school, I was doing some writing. I was doing college radio while I was in high school. Even though I never went to the college, I kind of broke into the radio station and tried out doing some shifts back then. And still do 2 radio shows a week, a syndicated show on FM radio and a show on satellite radio. Still love doing radio. It's still, you know, so much fun. It's so immediate. I get to do what I want, which a lot of radio people don't get to do. And obviously that metal show has become really popular, not only here in America, but around the world. I'm going to Brazil for the first time in a couple weeks, where that metal show is, like, I'm told, enormously popular, and I'm going there to host a festival. So I've never been to South America. I'm really excited for that. I leave for that on October 15th. So got a lot of great things going on, and I'm thankful, you know, to you guys and everybody that cares to read, listen, watch. At the end of the day, I just consider myself a fan still. I'm lucky, and I've worked hard to make a career out of this. But clearly, I mean, if you read my books or you hear me, I'm a fan, and I just say how I feel, and most people agree, some people don't. That's okay too. Most of the bands like me, a couple don't because of things I say, but I've just got to be a fan. It was really important to me to always be honest and have a discussion and a debate and respect other people's opinions and not be afraid to give mine. And it's one of the things that I think has made that metal show work too. When we first started doing that show, I said to my partners, Don and Jim, I said, I think we really kind of need to do this show in a way that we talk the same way we talk if we were at a bar having a beer about these bands. And not everybody's always going to like it, but it's just a lot more real and comes from the heart. And it's one of the reasons why the show has, I think, been successful. And my history with VH1 Classic goes back 12 years now, to 2002. A lot of people don't realize that. I was a host for that channel long before that metal show. The channel was a lot less popular, but I was a DJ and a host and interviewed every style of music. One day was Men at Work, one day was Gloria Gaynor, one day was John Mellencamp, one day was Black Sabbath, one day was whoever. And it was a lot of fun, and then I kept pushing him and pushing him to do, let me do my thing, turn me loose, let me talk. We have my friends and talk about bands that I love and do a show like that. And in 2008, they let me do it, and that's how that metal show was kind of born out of all that. So it's been amazing. To have been doing this 30 years, I must stress, when I started, I was very young, very, very young. But I truly think that this business and rock and roll music, if it's in your blood, does keep you young. I mean, I just turned 49, and I don't feel 49, and I just, you know, I still have the same energy and passion for it as I did as a little kid when I was just discovering these bands. So I appreciate y'all coming out, and I'm happy to take any questions about anything before we sign some books. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I totally agree with you. How you talk about how you guys talk about the bands and the debates you have, and that's what I say to all my fellow fans and fellow musicians. And you know, it's like, this is so cool that we have this show that they really have these impassioned discussions about which is better, Highway to Hell or Back in Black. You know, I mean, that's just like, discussions like that are great. But there's a lot of questions I'd like to ask you. But
You should see the discussions off camera.
I'm sure.
Yeah, the discussions in the dressing room are brutal, but.
But I'm originally from this part of the country, but in the mid-'80s, I did live in Southern California and discovered KNAC when I was out there. And so I'm just wondering, first of all, can you talk a little bit about KNAC and your relationship with them? And then also, I'm also curious, I think everybody knows the answer to this question, but what's up with Ozzy not coming on the show?
Okay, I can answer both. KNAC, for those that don't know, was a hard rock station in Southern California. It was in Long Beach, actually, just outside of LA. Their signal was actually really sketchy in LA, but people were so passionate about listening to them that people would tune in and find a way to listen. This is back in the 80s. They were a very influential station because they were pretty much 24 hours hard rock, which was pretty rare. It still is. They went off the air, I don't know what year, probably like 92-ish. I think they became a Spanish station, which they are now, something like that. They're not, I don't think they're anything to do with rock anymore. And then the station, because the name was sort of legendary, a lot of people in videos, guys in videos on MTV used to wear the T-shirt all the time. It just became this legendary kind of call letters. That the station was just reborn like 10 years ago as exclusively an internet radio station, which it still is today, KNAC.com. My relationship with them, I've never worked for them at all. They stream my current radio show. So I think Saturday and Monday mornings, the show I do on FM radio that's syndicated, that could air here on the local rock station if they put my show on, but they won't. But if they did, it's a show that runs around the country on like 30 stations, and they just stream it. So if you guys wanted to hear it and you missed the stream off any of the stations that do air it, every Saturday and Monday you can log on and you'll hear them run my show. But they were working in the music business in the 80s. They were a very important station. As far as Ozzy is concerned, there's only 2 artists that won't do the show because of something we said or they think we said. And one is Ozzy, but it's not Ozzy, it's Sharon. I mean, whenever you say Ozzy, it's Sharon. Because she, Ozzy, I don't know how much he knows and what goes on. And I don't mean that as a diss, but everybody saw the TV show. I mean, there's no secrets out there. It's a shame because we'd love to have him on, and I was just told recently by someone extremely close to him, let's just say somebody else in Black Sabbath, leave it at that, so it's 3 guys, that Ozzy's favorite TV show is That Metal Show. And I said to this person, did he ever wonder why he was never on it? And he goes, no, it's Ozzy. He couldn't put that together. I'm like, it just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God. But she shoots it down, allegedly because she doesn't like me. And the reasons why I can only tell you that I don't know the woman, which is even stranger. The only reason why I imagine she doesn't like me is because I call it like I see it. And when you are somebody, to some artists, an educated interviewer about their career is a huge threat. There's a lot of artists that want to do an interview where they hand you the one sheet on their new record, and the interviewer, like on CNN or something, that doesn't really know much about music, goes, hey, Ozzy, tell us about your new record. Okay, great. Good luck with it. It's out now. Bye. And that's it. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want to be asked questions like, how is it that you never wrote a record in your entire life, but on Bark at the Moon it says all songs by Ozzy Osbourne? How did that happen? They don't want that question. They don't want, so she gets mad when I have a guy like Jake E. Lee on my show who played with Ozzy and say to Jake, so you wrote Bark at the Moon? And he said, yes, I did. They look at the back of the record, it says all songs written by Ozzy Osbourne. And Jake says on my show, all I want is credit for doing it. And that makes somebody's head explode. God forbid it gets out like that. I was extremely vocal about the fact that on the first 2 Ozzy records, the bass and drums were replaced for a time period because they didn't want to pay Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake. I mean, that's insanity to me. And where most people in the industry just like, oh, it's just Sharon being Sharon. I'm like, no, that's BS. That's tampering with iconic records. And a lot of people didn't even realize it. I was very vocal about it. So as a result, that didn't sit too well. Now, call me crazy, but in Ozzy's own book, he wrote that it was totally wrong and he was against it. And just a couple of years ago, they changed it back. So I don't think I'm nuts. I just think that I'm saying things that maybe not everybody, wants to hear. So that's the issue there, and it's a shame because you would hope that someone would just come on and discuss and debate that instead of running from it. But if you're not just, every record that you made is the best, and this record's better than the one before it, and we love you, and just throw flowers at their feet every second, and don't ask it, and you're a threat to ask a tough question, there are people that will just avoid you because they don't want to be put in that position. So that's really what it's about. I don't know her at all. I met her one time, like 10 years ago. I mean, I don't know the woman, but it's just something in her head. And the last thing on that too, and anybody that has any issue with me, I have no problem telling them straight up if I said something or not. And there's times I've been critical, but this internet social media world that we live in really plays into that problem too. Because I'm always kind of respectful when I critique something, and I always say, listen, but if you like it, that's cool, and whatever, you know. But I can say something in a very respectful way about something, and then somehow that gets translated through the fan forums and the internet and Twitter and Facebook, and when it finally gets to the manager or artist, it became, it could have been like, Eddie said he didn't like the new album as much as the last. And then when it works its way through that social media web and it gets to that person, that translates to, Eddie said you suck and your mother should die. well, you know. So that's a lot of what I deal with too. It becomes much more embellished because obviously nobody wants to hear about the 98% good things. They just, oh my God, you said one bad thing. But we got to do the show that we do. And I mean, my platforms, you know, I've been in the business 30 years and, you know, I've been doing radio a long time, so I don't know what people heard and didn't hear, but all I've said to anybody that has an issue with me is come ask me, and if you have an issue, let's talk it out and discuss it. That's all I can do. But I can't change what I do. I think a lot of the reason why I got to where I'm at because I'm a fan, and I'm going to always be a fan. Go ahead, sir.
You mentioned that there are two acts that wouldn't be on your show. One was Ozzy. Who's the other one?
He's crossing his feet over his kid. He's wearing a Kiss shirt and he's crossing his arms like this. But only you have to cover the faces of Gene and Paul. The other two guys have been on. He's got a Kiss shirt on too. You're good there. Okay. There's your answer. Actually, not Kiss. I shouldn't say. It's just Gene and Paul.
Right.
And primarily, it's all Paul. It's 99% Paul.
Really?
He's a very sensitive guy. Paul runs the Kiss machine these days, and. I sat with Gene 2 months ago in LA, who looked me in the eye, and there's pictures of it and everything. I have no problem with you. I've known you forever. You're a fan. You have the right to say what you want. He kept saying, I have no problem with you. And then a month later, he blocked me from following on Twitter for not saying anything. But I found out it comes from Paul steering the Kiss ship these days. And Paul's a sensitive guy, and I've had a very complex relationship with that guy. Not close, we've never been close, but just in the sense of, hard to figure out. Known the guy forever, and very hard to figure out. Very hot and cold. 1 minute, he likes you and you're a fan and a friend, and the next minute you're the devil. And I don't know what gets in his head and what he hears. But all I've ever said about Kiss, and I still stand behind it, is I'm not a fan of them dressing replacement members as Ace and Peter. I can't look at it, I choose to not go anymore, and I think it's a line that was crossed as a fan I can't look at. And if you're cool with it, great, go, have fun. I'm not judging you, I'm just saying for me, I can't see it. Never said they shouldn't replace Ace and Peter, never said Ace and Peter should be back in the band, never said anything bad about Tommy or Eric. I've known them both for years. All I ever said is I wish they were their own characters doing their own thing and not impersonating what these other guys created. That's all I ever said. And that is a problem, apparently. And by the way, it's something that tons of people feel in the industry. Tons of bands that tour with them feel, but nobody will say it publicly. But they all say it privately. But I'm not going to edit myself. I've got to be honest. And again, if fans are cool with it and they just want to go see a show and they don't care, that's cool too. Just for me, I can't go see it. Go ahead.
I think a lot of people that are going are nostalgia people that are going to see they think they're seeing the real Kiss. They don't know that they're not seeing Ace or Peter. I think a lot of fly-by-night fans think they saw the original Kiss.
I think in the beginning that might have been the case, but I don't think it's so much the case anymore. I think really what it is that you have the super, super passionate Kiss fans that will go even when Gene and Paul replace themselves, which may very well happen very soon. They will do a sanctioned tribute where there's nobody original guys in the band. But I also think that it's just a case, I talk to a lot of people that are very casual fans and they only know a couple Kiss songs and they don't really care. They want to see the fire, the bombs, the makeup, the show, and go home hearing rock and roll night, and they don't care who played it. And that's their prerogative as well. But that's not me. I mean, Kiss was a sacred band to me growing up. I cared about who was playing and who was behind the makeup and who was in the band throughout the whole history. I mean, what I get mad about when people say about my situation with Kiss is like, oh, you only like the original lineup because you're friends with Ace. Couldn't be further from the truth. I was close with Bruce. My first book is dedicated to Eric Carr, who was a dear friend. All the guys in Kiss, because they were their own people. But the line is a fan. I'll always be a Kiss fan, but I just can't look at what they do now. And to me, they said they were going to retire in 2002. And in my view, that's when they should have ended and just gone off and done their own thing. Because if you read every interview they did 10 years ago, they all said, well, we don't want to make a mockery of the band. We're getting too old. We can't put the high energy show on. Well, take a look at what's happening right now. I mean, every day I get somebody asking me, Paul's voice isn't there. They're not moving like they used to. What happened? Well, there you go. Stay too long at the party, I think. But if people are cool with it, they don't have to please me. They could go on for another 20 years if people want to keep going. And I don't judge anybody for liking it.
Do you know Vinny?
Vinny Vince is a total recluse. I met him once, but I have no idea. He lives in Nashville, and I have no idea what happened to him. Yes?
Kind of along that line, do you know anything behind the breakup of Bon Jovi with the Cheese?
Only that I don't know anything personally. I'm not directly involved in that. I don't know anything. All I know is that from what I've been told, it's money related. It's financial.
It's just that John doesn't want to pay.
Yeah, I mean, the story I heard, and again, I don't know how true this is. John wants to own or buy a piece of an NFL team. He's a big football fan, and he's trying to. I mean, he's got a ton of money already, but he's trying to raise some sort of capital. And Richie John Bon Jovi was the only one signed to the original record deal. The other guys are all basically salaried employees, but Richie was getting the most by far because he was also a songwriter. So I think they were having some issues, and then all of a sudden they took a look at the financial bottom line. John's a businessman.
That's what I had read. So
Yeah.
he could instead pay this other guy minimal
Here's the deal about any band that replaces any members. If they get away with it, meaning it doesn't affect their record sales greatly, and the tour attendance doesn't drop off greatly, that person has no leverage to come back. And the person running the show will have very little interest in trying to bring them back. Meaning that if Bon Jovi continues to play stadiums around the world and their draw barely drops off without Sambora there, why would he bring them back? He's paying a guy 1% of what he was paying Richie. Now, if it hits him in the pocket, any reunion that happens only happens for one reason, because it's going to really move the draw up. And that's the only reason why. Nobody ever reunited because they're going to get less people at their shows.
The fan told Richie was in rehab,
Yeah.
like when the last time I saw him, my sister and I had no idea that Richie wasn't going to be there. In fact, my sister and I said we wouldn't have gone, knowing there was going to be a self-guitarist.
Yeah.
And everybody there had dolls, saying they were Richie dolls and crying out, Richie, Richie. And, a bunch of people were upset.
But see, you can see, here's the difference though. Fans will, and again, I don't mean to be cold about this, but it is the music business, so it purely comes down to dollars and cents. So it doesn't matter how many people cry out because a member's not there. If they're doing that crying while they're at the show that they already paid the $150 for, it doesn't matter because they got you. And it's the same thing, with Kiss, that fans outraged in the beginning. Ace is not there, Peter's not there. Well, if you're still buying the ticket and buying the record, it's never going to change. And, I always tell people, my phrase is always, you vote with your wallet. So if you're into it and you still go and they're still getting your money, that's the thing. And here's the other thing, too. Some bands will tell you that they're just as big without the original guys, and it's not true. I mean, in the case of Kiss, Gene will sit there and tell you, our band's bigger than it's ever been. Sure, they'll do some festivals around the world and stuff, but I don't know, with the original band, they did 4 nights at Madison Square Garden. With the current band, they co-headlined with Motley Crue, meaning 50-50. Nobody co-headlines unless they have to. Nobody, more than anybody, Gene Simmons gives up 50% when he would normally give up 2% on an opening act. So, of course there's changes in how the business works. Bill Ward being out of Black Sabbath. People went crazy about that. It's not a reunion, it's not a reunion. Well, I hate to say it, it's not a reunion, but guess what? Sabbath's album entered at #1, and the shows that I saw were packed. So